fancy seeing you here. Welcome to Crescent Wood. So here we've got the entrance area Nook, which is in itself is its own zoning area. And what I really like about this space is that there's different layers of textures and furniture that defines the area. So what we initially started with, we were just going to put an accent wallpaper just to define the space here. But then it didn't make sense just to stop here. So we wrapped the wallpaper all the way around so it had its own corner. This is from Arte, it's from Waves, absolutely love it. So when you touch it, it actually has like a grainy texture feel. And then you've got the patterns and the different shades and hues within the wallpaper, which is really stunning. So that was the initial piece. And then we wanted to still have the reflection of light bouncing around. So we went through these different frosted panes, mirror, more for aesthetics really, but it does the job when you're getting ready just to leave, you can check yourself. And then continue on that feeling of texture, we went for this beautiful console table, which I love. It's almost got like a bubbly texture. What I really like about it is that some parts are faded out. So as you touch it, you've got the texture, but then you've got the different hues of color. And then we're still in keeping with that kind of bronze feel, but this is more of an antique feel finish, which really encapsulates. So it hides away any objects, still looks good, and kind of creates a zone in the area. And then we've got this, is this working? It's not working, but we got this cordless lamp, because what I've noticed lately in design is really, people are after aesthetics as well as function. So we found this table lamp from Aria, which I thought was so cute. So you tap it a few times, it comes on, you charge it ever so often. And then we've got this nice little planter as well, just to complement it. So you want to add elements, but you don't want to overcrowd the space. So it's really important to keep that going. And then you'll see in this, as we continue to talk about the space, we've got the green O2, which is the central holding point for all the color palettes in the home. It was the first color that I had decided in the design, because the space all flowed into each other. You needed an anchor color and then all the colors to come off of it. So that's what we've done with the green. Then we now come to this beautiful bench from Go Modern. And this, what I really liked about it is that it has this kind of denim rugged texture, but it still has that fresh contemporary feel. And then in keeping with everything else, the brass detailing, you would almost think that the two items are from the same supplier. They're not, they're just really well made and matched together. So this actually came in from Italy, so really happy with this, how it came out, the finish and the details. And again, it frames the corner and frames the area, so you've got that nice feel in this corner. So this was actually not originally in the design. As we were going along, looking at the textures, looking at the patterns, I was thinking this area is looking way too naked. It needs something to ground it. So we've got this gorgeous rug from Rug Vista, and what I really enjoy about this is that it's got this watercolor effect. And it's quite unusual to have like a watercolor effect on a rug. So each area's kind of got its own hue, its own color palette. It's got touches and hints of mustard, light touches of blue. So it's all pulling out and bringing the colors together and still creating its own zone. Because one of the most important things you can do in a space is to find a zone, but without making it feel too encompassing. And I love to do that with rugs. So you'll see across in a lot of my designs, I use rugs as a way to layer and as a way to section off areas. So I've done that here, absolutely love it. And then we've got the textured here, where it's almost like a green, but it's got white undertones, which really kind of sits in between the watercolor texture, the blue tones of the wave. So it's got a very soothing feel, and that's what I wanted to create for this corner. This is the downstairs loo. So in here we wanted to create, you know when you go to a nice restaurant and you walk into the bathroom and it's not what you're expecting. So you want to recreate that here in the guest toilet. So we went for a very bold, vibrant Odyssey feel wallpaper from Nook. And I remember the client saying that as soon as they saw the wallpaper, they knew they wanted that to be the wallpaper. So I was like, okay, perfect, ran with it. So I picked out the tone, so we matched it with a red 02 from Nook. So all the crab and the octopus details are all in this red. And then you've got the blue, which is like a deep blue Odyssey feel. So when you're in it and you close the door, it honestly feels like you're in a complete different space. You feel underwater. You also feel quite calm, and you feel like maybe they should be singing Little Mermaid at some point, because it's got that nice, vibrant feel. And then to counteract that with the finishes, because one of the undertone themes in the design is more like an industrial feel. So initially we actually had a larger basin, which was white, but it was too big when it came. We wanted something more smaller, something a bit more delicate, so we went for this gorgeous polished concrete, and then went for gunmetal tap and bottle trap. So you've got this nice industrial feel mixed with the ocean. It's got these nice tones, and it just feels so different, so calming, so soothing. I mean, you can easily get lost in here. It's got a very psychedelic feel, so absolutely love that. And then we finished it off with these industrial lights, also continue with the industrial feel from Industrial. So Industrial Odyssey C is what we went for. Welcome to the living room, where we'll be starting our journey. So I'm very excited to discuss all the different elements of what happened in this space. But to set the tone, we started off with a nice warm greigey type colour to give a bit of warmth to the space. Initially, the space was like brilliant white, everything was white, it was very cold. So I wanted to add a bit of warmth and nature. So the first thing was to go with the walls. And then we had this lovely large kind of TV area, and the client specified they didn't really like going to the cinema, so they wanted to create like a surround effect where their home almost turned into a cinema. So initially the TV, what you'll see, was just kind of on this wall, it wasn't in set, and I was like, let's frame it so it looks like it belongs and it was always there. So the lovely builders managed to build this nice little shadow gap recess. So when you see the TV, it sits in, and it's got this lovely surround system, which I absolutely love. So that was a win. And then moving on from there was, of course, looking at the bigger items of furniture. So the one thing that the client had already chosen before the project started was the sectional sofa, and they had an olive green, which is a great color palette, because what I love about green is that not only is it my favorite color, but it also goes with a lot of tones. So it will be the outdoors connection to the outdoors. You can pair it with vibrant colors, you can pair it with neutral colors. So that kind of set the tone for the space. And with the sofa being so large, obviously it needed to be dressed. So we've got these gorgeous cushions. It was a mixture of Soho Home, Andrew Martin cushions, and we wanted a bit of texture. So some of them have patterns, some of them have brush fringe, and some of them have velvet. And what you find is all those textures and patterns kind of brings the cushions and sofa alive without being too much. And then, interestingly enough, to keep that whole texture, we went for this nice coffee table, and it's got this nice volcanic texture, which really kind of taps into that earthy, tactile tone that we wanted to create, and then softened it with these two gorgeous, vibrant pieces, which I absolutely love, which are actually from H&M Home. So, very good find. Now, I really wanted to talk about this rug because it's probably one of my favorite details in this space. Being that the space was so large, we needed something that was gonna make it feel warm, make it feel cozy, and be a clear defining zone, but not overwhelm the space. So most importantly, I think the first thing was the size, and then the second thing was the finish. Now, I managed to source this from Floor Story and they were absolutely amazing. Service was great, but just overall the texture and the pattern and the gradient that runs through the rug is really, really nice. So what I like is it starts with this sandy tone, and then as it gradually goes down to the bottom, it gets a bit darker with textures and tones. And when you feel the actual rug, it's got different heights. So some of it's a bit lower, some of it's a bit higher, creating that kind of gradient feel, which is kind of very rare to see in different spaces. So that was really important that we captured that. And it also was able to create its own zone in this area. So the wall space also became a point of conversation, because I feel like art is a way to be a talking point, the way to add warmth to a space, the way to add a person's interest in what they like. So initially this wall was, I think it was the last area where we chose a piece of art because we wasn't exactly sure what we wanted. Well, the client actually, that's not true. The client wanted something more of a 3D effect, but we wasn't sure how to approach that. So for me, when I work with clients, I want it to be a collaborative effort. It's not me being a dictator like, you must have this and we're gonna do this. It's very important that we come together with ideas and we collaborate. So I know they wanted a 3D relief, but I remember me and my assistant, we were looking, and we couldn't find anything. And then one of the days, I think I was just scrolling through Instagram and I saw this 3D relief and I was instantly mesmerized. I stopped scrolling and I was like, oh my God, who's this artist? Found this wonderful Dutch artist who creates these 3D kind of symmetric, unsymmetric, abstract type of wall art. And I was like, oh my God, this is the piece, I found it. So, and luckily what I really loved, it came in this tonal, earthy tone, which we already had going on in space. So we managed to choose a design. I think it took about maybe 3 weeks. We had a few delays because, you know, we're in the world of Brexit, what can we do? But eventually it got here. We had a few touch-ups that we had to do, but once it was on the wall, absolutely stunning. I even like the way it's got this shadow gap that goes around it. Really, really stunning. Honestly, for me, it really makes the space. It was like the final touch. So very, very happy with how that came out. So now we find ourselves in the reading nook area, which is more the chilled zone, the relaxation area. And I found this gorgeous prints by Formworks, also on Instagram. As you can see, a lot of inspiration can be found there. I love the color palettes, I love the abstract, I love the size of them, and I thought, oh, this would be a great way to segue this space from the living area. And then with that, we got these nice Chesterfield wingback chairs from Olivia's, which have this nice cushion padded seating, just to add a bit more warmth and texture. For me, it's very important that a space feels warm, but it doesn't overpower the space. And as you'll see with this home, it has a lot of connection to the outdoors. So I'm always relaying with the outdoors. So we continue with the olive greens, the earthy browns, just tonal colors. And then in terms of glass and metals, we're going for black glass, we're going for bronzes, all of these different elements tied together. The client wanted an arched lamp. Now this lamp originally was actually meant to go over the sofa, but the arc wasn't long enough. And I was like, let's put it in this side. And to be honest, it looks like it always was meant to be here. So I love that about that. We've got the sideboard, which originally wasn't here. We added that just to add a bit more bronze texture. These gorgeous dual lamps from Go Modern, just to add that ambient lighting. And what's really cool about this space, which I haven't mentioned yet, is the lighting. You can be quite playful because there's different layers of lighting. So you've got the main lighting on the ceiling, you've got the ambient lighting on the windows, and then you've got more like table lamps and floor lamps just to add that extra layer. Because one of the most important things in design is layering lighting. A lot of people don't know that. That's how you can create like vibes in sectional areas in different spaces. And then to finish off, we actually had a different rug that was going to go here. It was going to be something similar to the artwork in the living room. It was more going to be like a relief texture. But unfortunately, due to delays, it kept being pushing back, and then we had to eventually change the rug. So we went for this instead, which was more earthy. And what I liked about this rug is that it introduced more blue tones, which we initially didn't have in the space. So it kind of broke up the colour in here, which was really, really nice. And then we got this coffee table in a black glass, which has a complimentary side table just to hold smaller items. And then the client introduced some plants and foliage, which I love because it continued that connection with nature, plants, indoor plants, but just still adding that level of texture, which is absolutely stunning in this space. So I have to talk about these gorgeous textured Japanese woven knit curtains. So this style of property is designed with a courtyard, so it's got a U shape, which means most of the center is surrounded in glass. And I remember when I initially did the design, the client was like, we want all the natural light to come through, no curtains, no window treatments. And they kept saying, I was like, are you sure, are you sure? So we got maybe towards the end, actually, yeah, I think we got right to the end of the project. They were like, so we kind of want the curtains? And I was like, I told you. So yeah, we decided they wanted the curtains. And once again, collaborative effort, they actually found this gorgeous texture, but it was just a fabric. So I was like, okay, we need to find a curtain maker. We need to make this happen. But because the ceilings were so high, it wasn't a standard size. So this is actually very bespoke to this space. And it was interesting because we had to kind of go back and forth because they wanted to have like almost where it's just skimming the floor. So it's got this kind of ripple effect. And as we put them up, we realized when it got to the corner, it was slightly higher. So that side of the house is actually slightly higher, but you wouldn't know unless you lived here. So it's a minor thing, it's a property, this is what happens in construction. We can live with it. So as we did that, and then we had a kind of ceiling track to pin the curtains. Client wasn't fond of it. So builder was like, oh, I know, let's build a pelmet. I was like, okay, that's not a bad shout. So when I say collaborative, the builders collaborate, the client collaborate, we're all a team. We're all working together, everyone's pitching their ideas. I'm like, does it work? Yes, maybe not. Yes, it does. Most of the time it works because we've got a very good working kind of mindset. So the pelmet came in, so this kind of covered the pleats, which was really nice. And then the electrician and the client, and I knew where they were going before they even said it. They were like, don't you think it would be really nice if we could get some lights in the pelmet? And I was just like, yes, of course it will be. Of course it will be. So we added the lighting, and honestly, the lighting with the curtain was everything. It was like the cherry on the cake. It was absolutely stunning. So I'm so glad they suggested to do that. So here are the curtains. So the kitchen was probably the easiest area to put together because everything was in situ, but it needed some light because as you can see, all the cabinets, everything, the island is white, but the walls were also white. So it was very cold, very clinical. So we needed to add some earthy tone to just soften that out. And like I mentioned earlier, it was really important to have the anchor of the green as the main focal point holding the colors together. So the main change in this space was the green O2 on the walls by Nick, and then the two hanging pendant lights. So the pendant lights add a bit of ambience whilst you're eating or whilst you're kind of congregated around this area. I think it was really important to just add that element. So here we find ourselves in the dining room. So although you want your scheme to have its own identity, it's very important that it's cohesive. So here we went for a slightly cooler color palette and we went for a grey on the walls just to frame the area. once again creating its own zone. And like I always say to you guys, it's a collaborative effort. So in this dining space particularly, there wasn't too much that needed to be done. It was more the elements that were going to make the area. So once again, found these gorgeous pieces of art from Trowbridge. And what actually made the work stand out was the sizing and the frames, and then the art itself. It really creates the continuation of the earthy tones, the different hues. But here, what I like, we've got a bit more red undertones. In the living areas, a bit more green undertones, but here we start to introduce like more terracotta tones into the space. And then the client actually had one Tom Dixon light that they already had. So I was like, okay, cool, great. Let's create a hanging feature where they're at different heights, so it creates something more interesting to look at. And what I love about these lights, as well as illuminating the space, they also work like a piece of art. It's got that whole metallic feel, chrome feel, and it's still in continuation with everything else. So you see, it's like a darker version of the walls, which are all coming together. In continuation of the wall art, the client actually found this piece of art on Etsy, which was very exciting, but they didn't have a framer. So in my studio, I have a framer in my studio. So I like to, where I can, work with smaller business or artisans because it's very important to me that we can collaborate. So we managed to get the artwork framed and stretched, and it just honestly just adds so much depth into the area. Really, really nice. And then similarly, another key piece is the dining table. Now the dining table is made out of concrete. It has been sanded, polished and brought down. Came all the way from Berlin. As you can imagine, it weighs a ton. It was very, very heavy to get in. So once it's in position, it's in position. And we had to get the design and everything in the right place by just marking the area where the table was going to be, because the table came last. So everything else had to be worked around the table. And what I really love is that it injects this kind of natural stone feel into the space. And originally we were actually going to go for colourful chairs, and I'm so glad that we didn't. We went for the darker wood with the grey upholstery. So all the darker tones are all coming together. So you'll see it in the framework, in the finishing of the chairs, like darker tones, just to have that more grounding feel. And similarly, like I said before, it's very important with the continuation of the rug. So this rug is very similar to the living room rug, but this has a bit more blue textures, and it's still got that sandy gradient hue running through. So you've got that nice encompassing space. And then this actually was one of the fine details. The table was looking a bit naked, like a dining table. It either needs decorative pieces or it needs fruit. It needs something to say, I'm here. Now we couldn't go for something that was too high because obviously that would then interact with the lights. So I found these gorgeous pieces from Liang and Elm, and I'm so glad. They weren't actually a pair, they were actually individual. And I found them and they come sit together. I was like, oh my God, that would be really nice just to inject a bit more red, but still keep with the natural textured earthy tones. So everything's a bit more fluid here, there's more curves, it's less linear, it's softer, it's warmer, and then obviously you've got the natural light coming through the space. So it's a very exciting corner, very soothing, very relaxing. So here we find ourselves in the bar. Now, the bar was a labor of love. I know initially we were going to have a bar design, but it changed so many times that, not that we lost track, but it was just like, okay, how can we encapsulate everything that is needed, but still make it cohesive with the dining area? So in the end, so initially I drew out this style, and then my builder recommended, because the area is so wide and there was a certain style of door that the client wanted, we then incorporated shelving, but dark stained, so it matched the rest of the dining area with the dark tones. So we introduced shelving from floor to ceiling, and what I really love is that they actually have integrated lighting, because another thing was, because we were coming out, because this corner was just a blank corner, there was nothing here. Because we were coming out, we were losing the light, so we had to move one of the lights slightly along, so it wasn't just in a pool of darkness. So that was one of the top things. And then in terms of the bar finish, once again, I was being inspired. So I actually went to Chelsea Harbour Design Centre. At the time, it was Design Week, and I came across, the first stand I came across was Famid Khalik, and I instantly fell in love with this wallpaper. Like, it was absolutely stunning. I was like, this is it. This is this is the design that has to happen. So this actually pans out to the outside as well as the inside, you'll see shortly. And then I wanted something very simple for the opening of the bar. So we've got these gorgeous textured Dowsing Reynolds, kind of still with the industrial feel, still in keeping with the rest of the home. And then to also add a bit more, create a look for this space, because I'm all about creating individual zones within an overall space. We introduced this nice forestry kind of deers in the forest, in the foliage, and this is from Butte Wallpaper, and this is so stunning because it almost doubles up as a mural. And what is really nice, it's got this nice seamless look, it's got the richer tones, it's got the blues and the greens, so it all just comes together and creates this nice cohesive feel. And it's got little touches of red tones, which goes back to what I mentioned earlier with the terracotta artwork and sculpture pieces. So everything is slowly coming together. And what's quite nice about this space, with the introduction of the shelving, the client can either choose to have personal photographs or they can have decorative pieces. And one thing I always say to people, I like to change my home seasonally. I think after a while, when you're in a home for a while, you start to get bored. So around spring, autumn is a great time to like switch things around. It doesn't have to be anything major. So this is a great place where I'll switch things around. So in the winter, I might have different things here. And then in the autumn and spring, I'll have different things here. It's just to freshen up the space without doing too much, just to add a bit of change. So here we'll find is the bar. So this is the interior. And then for the inside of the wallpaper, we went for a slightly browner tone, and then we went for a brushed copper, brushed bronze tone in the backsplash of the bar, which is really stunning. And then we've incorporated a refrigerator for like wines and red wines and white wines, and then just additional if you want to put your ice bucket, anything like that. So the whole idea is that it's almost a standing bar, but when it's closed, it's a part of the entire space. So we really want to create that free-flowing space. And one of the most important specs is to try and create this thing where the doors are slightly big. So it was very important that we captured that. And then when you open the doors, it opens upon opening. And then we've got these nice tones. So we're still keeping with the natural wooden tones. And we've got this composite top that really finishes off the details. So it's really, really a celebration of enjoyment, a celebration of fun, a celebration of craftsmanship. There were so many drawings, discussions, but in the end, I'm so glad we got there because honestly, it really makes the space and it adds so much details and qualities, which wraps around. And even as you wrap around the corner, before there was just open shelving there. So to make the space feel more seamless and wholesome, we actually added cupboard doors to the top and bottom, continued with the same sort of ironmongery, so it felt quite complete. That was very important to capture. Introducing the gym. Now, as you may know, when you're working out, you need to have hyper-focus. You want to be in the zone. So optimally, we went for the darkest shade of black that we could find because we really wanted to have that level of intensity and concentration whilst you're working out, whether you're meditating, whether you're doing weights. Either way, it's to try and encapsulate that whole feeling of having a gym at home. And what I really love about this particular space is that you've got your view looking outside into nature, so you're having that connection with nature. You've also got natural light coming through, so although you're inside, it's almost like an inside-outside feeling. And we took that colour all the way up into the ceiling, and if you know me, you know I love to cover ceilings because people always neglect ceilings. So we took the colour all the way up. But then when we did that, we noticed that the spotlights were in the white finish, which wasn't so great. So we painted them as well to have that complete unison finish. And then the client had a TV they wanted mounted, so any kind of trunking, we also had that painted. And then the fixtures and finishes, we went for like a gunmetal finish as well. And then to finish off the look, the client wanted a mirror kind of corner, so when they're working out, they can kind of see the weights they're doing. So in the corner, we've got a Rowan shoe machine, which also has a wraparound mirror. So it has that, it kind of bounces off the light and makes the space feel a lot bigger than it is. So although it's in a deep black, it still feels a lot bigger than usually it would feel. People are always afraid of colour or adding things, but I think it's really important to be able to use each colour where you can. And I particularly love this black because it's so rich and so encompassing, and I think it complements well with the floor, so it's a win-win.